So what did did Al's favorite win the Masters?
Oh, Tommy, are you kidding me?
No, I don't know.
My father is the most anti-live golf fanatic on planet Earth.
Oh, so
I'm not kidding.
His favorite did win then.
Yes, but the entire weekend while you guys were doing Pasquotank, if I heard one more profanity-laden Bryson DeChambeau remark from him.
Hey, you know what? That guy, he's not as offensive as he used to be. He's kind of softened himself a little bit. He doesn't look like some sort of G.I. Joe doll now, and he's tried to make himself a friendlier character. I'll give him that. He's still one of those live bums, but you know.
When he was high-fiving the kids after the Saturday
yeah,
round,
it got a little too much.
Well, yeah, they needed, the PR people needed to just shut up for a while. Is what needed to happen.
Oh, you can't win.
Tommy, I have a question for you. I have a question.
Yeah.
What the heck was it like commentating that tournament this weekend?
Man, I can't remember. I mean, it was so bizarre, so shocking. I kept thinking, what are these guys that are going out and making these long runs, getting everything broken on their boats and everything like that? They come back, they don't have as much as they want to have, and then they see what was being done. By Welcher.
What was being done?
Yeah, it's like that phone call that says, someone's giving me threatening phone calls. We'll trace it. Oh, the phone call is coming from inside the house. He was there inside the house. He was just around the corner, wreaking the most incredible amount of havoc and destruction for 4 straight days. Really, the first 3
months. I will live by it. I'll totally live by what I said to you when we did the phoner yesterday for Bassmaster Live. I walked through the living room at 8:15 a.m. on Championship Sunday, and it said 117 pounds to 57 pounds, and I got mad at the studio. I was like, there is a typo, and this is obnoxiously wrong. This is really bad.
I thought it was a hoax, when I first saw it, come up when I got up in the morning, and I don't know. I think we'll be analyzing that one for years to come, and still not quite figure out what did happen there. And to answer your question,
yeah, and I think really one of the other things, and I tuned in for obvious reasons. I mean, a dude's just jamming 6 to 10 pounders on camera. I mean, there's reason enough. But I think what was really, from an outsider perspective, about we're going to break down a lot of things about Kyle Welcher. He's an interesting cat, obviously a very interesting dude. But to what he did, and the rest of the field for the most part, with the weather, really the weather that was the, I guess, besides busting, guys busting up their boats, I really believe that if you guys would have hit warmer temps combined with that full moon that we had, there's no telling what would have went down. There would have been, Such would have been a basket case with century belts.
Absolutely. There's no doubt it wasn't even at its best, and this place is super. Yes. I think impressive. I think you'd agree with me on that. Well, we're going to get to that, all of that. We're going to delve deeper into that, break down that incredible victory there.
Yes.
Also, we're going to hit on the Scott Martin story for the second time, sort of the second Scott Martin story to come along in just a few weeks here.
And Tommy, I'll tell you about that situation. We're going to lay down some facts. About the entire situation, and not only that, some facts that came to light many years ago. I talked to Scott on, of all things, I actually talked to Scott on day 1 of the Pasquotank event. I was driving back from taping in Iowa, and got to talk with Scott for about almost 2 hours, and got some of his thoughts and probably shared some of my thoughts with Scott. So we'll tackle that today too.
Yeah, there's not the statement from Bass is pretty brief and pretty basic. When we get around to that, yeah, I'll try to read that and everything. But yeah, obviously you've got a lot more background on that story to touch on here. So that's looking forward to that. What else are we going to talk about today? Something about technology.
Tommy, we're going to talk about. Doggone it, we're going to talk about technology again. We're going to talk about technology in bass fishing. I think our podcast number one, we kicked off with technology dominating, but I'm going to really give you some thoughts on perspective, landscape mode. That for the most part, Kyle was using that throughout this tournament, obviously using his forward-facing sonar. And we're going to talk about really a couple different tournaments that have been embarrassing blowouts on shallow water fisheries like we got to see. So we're definitely going to jump into that later, much later in the show, but we'll have a lot of fun before we get there.
All right, so some news about how the asteroid is still planning to wipe out the planet here. It's hurtling toward us, and we're going to delve.
Everything's broken. Why can't we have good things?
All right. Well, how about we get things started by getting our priorities in order and making sure this is getting somehow funded or supported by some good people there. I think you can give us the Strike King angle on this, Mark Zona.
Actually, Tommy, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you the lose angle, my friend. And here's the thing. Before we get to number one today, a big shout out to our guy, Bubba Torres. Bubba Torres winning the classic package that we sent it to him last week. And here's what I can tell you. Tommy, I done hooked Bubba up, okay?
What did he get?
He got the right color. He got what? No, it's not what did he get? It's what didn't Bubba Torres get. The only thing missing would have been a credit card if I'd have put it in there for him. Anyway, big shout out to him. And here's what I'm going to show you today, friendos. You ready? How about a Lose Hyper Mag spinning reel? Very, very smooth. Very, very smooth drag. And the great thing about the Hyper Mag, it's something I actually worked with gentleman Rocky Calso with from Lose several years ago. And the great thing about this, very, very smooth drag. And the other fantastic thing is under $200. So here's what I want. We're going to play the little game again today. I'm going to send this reel and some other stuff we're going to talk about. You just need to go to my, whether it's Facebook or it's my, Mark Zona Fishing Instagram page. And here, let's play a little game, Tommy. Here's what I want you to put. After watching this podcast, go put, I want that Hyper Mag, old boy. That's all you got to put. I'm going to pick one of you randomly.
I want that Hyper Mag, oh boy.
O-L, old boy.
Oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, all right, old boy. I hear you.
I will send the Hyper Mag. I will send tons of stuff. We'll have a bunch of fun with it. And a big shout out to Bubba Torres because he nailed it. The color was red bug.
Absolutely.
The color was red bug.
Lucky guy, Bubba Torres. Okay.
Yes.
We acknowledge that. Well, great. Well, let's hit what we usually hit first off, our news, notes, and nuggets, and I think we previewed it a little bit. I mean, the big story is this new place we landed with the Bassmaster Elite Series, which had never been to North Carolina before, much less this Albemarle Sound and the Pasquotank River and all those connected rivers there, this giant place. And it didn't matter how big it was. The story took place within, just about 1.5 miles of the old ramp there.
Say that.
That's unbelievable. Say it again. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting about Kyle Welcher. Tommy, you know that Kyle and myself did not get out on the best foot a few years ago. He was elusive. He was one of those anglers that was, at the beginning of his career, he was very elusive. No pun intended, Kyle kept his cards close to the vest, man.
Absolutely.
my job is to pry it out of the Kyle Welchers, the superstars of the sport. But here's what has happened throughout the last few years, and especially since I stepped away from Bassmaster Live. Kyle Welcher and myself, we become best friends. We become very
he's a personable guy when you get to that. I think he's very smart, very, very clever. You want to listen when he talks.
Yes, and that is something later in this show. Kyle really broke some things down for me about this victory that we're going to talk about later on in this podcast. That would, to me, was absolutely amazing to folks that bedfish, that sight fish. He let some nuggets out that were unbelievable. But here's the one thing, and this is something that we talked about yesterday, Tommy. Dude, you and I have covered so many tournaments, and some of those tournaments, in my opinion, and we've talked about it at dinners, there's been certain tournaments where an angler touches perfection. Yeah. The word perfection. You can look at Patty Walters on Lake Fork a few years ago. You can even really throw out Corey Johnston last year. Looking back, the Timmy Horton at Champlain, I think Skeet Reese on Smith Mountain, to Van Dam on Lake Katawachi. But when we got to see the last 4 days with Kyle Welcher, I think this blows away anything that the Bassmaster could be. Here's why I say that.
Okay.
This dude came into this tournament. It literally said this during the event, said it to me 2 hours ago. He said, dude, I was shooting for 15 pounds of bass on day one. 15 pounds was his target.
I've heard as little as 9. So, as he was telling some people, I might catch 9 on the first day.
Yes. And he said, he goes, Z, I had one great big one locked on a bed, and then I was going to go to some, I can't say his exact words because Kyle tends to use the same language that we tend to use. And he said, I was going to go to some blank canals and catch a bunch of 2-pounders and come to the weigh-in in a really, really bad mood. And he said, I pulled up to where I had a big one spawning, and then there was another one and another one. And here's why I want to throw the word perfection out, because that's a word that we don't use a lot in the world of professional bass fishing, Tommy. It's not like he went into each individual day like, man, I'm gonna go catch 30 pounds tomorrow. He definitely went and practiced and came into day 2, day 3, and day 4 with at least one big one that I spied with his forward-facing sonar.
Right. He said something to prime the pump every day.
Something to prime the pump, but it's not like he had 5 to prime the pump.
Right.
Like it happened as it went along. And to do that as guys were destroying their equipment, destroying their body, running across that sound, as this dude was using, a half a tank of gas. Unbelievable. And again, of all of those tournaments that I named, and I know a bunch of our viewers at TnZ, y'all have your own, touching of perfection in professional fishing. Sure. Boy, this is the top of my list, man. This is the top of my list.
Well, the thing about it is he climbed on top of the mountain, and there wasn't a traffic jam up there. Everyone else was down there at the bottom of the volcano. Nobody could get any traction on him. And this place he was fishing, he didn't outrun people at the takeoff and cut into a secret hidey hole, jump a log, and get into a magic pond. This stuff was available. Half the field had a crack at it. I mean, that to me is the most incredible thing.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Calling this tournament, okay. I was texting with Kyle, and he says, man, I kind of wish you were in the seat, commentating this with Tommy and Davey. And there was a part of me, I responded, well, heck yes, man. I wish I was there. Record break, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then there was also a big part of me, Tommy, that after he got to a 1,700 pound lead on the final day, I was like, ooh. I don't want any part of this, right? I don't want right. It makes for a very hard, long last day to commentate.
And to us, in our world, a blowout is something in just north of 7 pounds, a margin of 7 pounds against the rest of the field. This was a completely different sort of species of animal here. This was unbelievable, so much so that it almost went full circle around and became such a spectacle. You didn't worry about that. And they were catching fish, and the second biggest sin for us is a place where they go for a couple hours without catching a fish. And, it almost came full circle. In the end, you really were glad you were here. You were glad you were watching this spectacle. Yes. And what you can say about it, maybe you didn't enlighten anybody, but you just stand by with everyone else and oohed and awed at all the incredible things that you can't believe you're seeing.
To do that on a half a tank of gas, to do that with basically one bait, throwing a Bronco bug the entire event, and to figure it out. Look, we know Kyle Welcher is a threat because that dude wants to win tournaments.
Oh yeah,
and that's something else. We're going to talk about that later in this podcast. But for him to catch that, let me say it again, for him to catch that weight on the fly, it's not like here's what's weird, dude. Like Van Dam at Lake Katawachi had a spot sharing with other people, but he just basically just beat the brakes off of guys fishing around him.
Yeah.
Timmy Horton had a spot. This dude just put his trolling motor down and found himself 1,000 pounds of bass on the move. That's what I liked about this.
Yeah, absolutely. It was unlike, we've never seen anything even close to that. And 118 pounds, that puts him in the 13th best all time.
Wow.
If you had polled anybody, you, me, anybody connected with the sport and said, hey, we're going to add another Century Club state to our list of states that produce 100-pounders, and somebody said North Carolina, we'd have fallen off the stool laughing. Absolutely.
After experiencing, let me say this again, after experiencing what we got to see with Kyle, if the Elite Series would have collided with warm temps, warm nights with that full moon that we had over the weekend, boy, it would have been ugly. If the rest of the field did what they did under the crappy conditions that they were under, imagine what would have went down here if they were in prime conditions. Great, big hats off, and hats off to you guys. I found myself throughout the whole weekend cheering for the whole situation.
Absolutely, so and really hats off to the guys, one in particular who predicted basically the arc of the tournament. He said that we're going to have guys going all over the place. There's going to be someone who had a crappy practice and is going to just stay there and scratch his head and not get very far away and figure out something and win the tournament. And it came to pass that way. So that was a little bit of a crystal ball action that impressed me.
Impressive.
Very, very impressive. His day three weight would have won the tournament by 21 pounds. That's true. His day three weight could have not showed up, gone out to Kitty Hawk or something and done sightseeing or something, and would have won by 21 pounds. I that still can't wrap my head around that.
I literally how you don't want to use the word demoralizing, but how do you feel going into Championship Sunday of the other 9 anglers and knowing I'm going to go out today and I'm going to get my teeth kicked in again?
And that's absolutely, and a lot of them said, I think Seth Fighter and a couple of others said, actually this is a no pressure day. I mean, I'm not going to have to duel anybody down the back stretch and coming home around the turn for home. This is pretty much decided. I can go out there and enjoy this place. And they truly did enjoy fishing there just because, every day they learn more about what actually lived there.
Here's what's one. Well, let me give you one last thought because I tuned in and I got to watch the other anglers. Here's what's really weird. The 9 anglers that were out there, not Kyle Welcher, were laid back, no pressure. It honestly looked like the angler with the most pressure was Kyle out there wanting to catch another 30-pound bag. So,
yeah, there was one point there. He says early in the afternoon, and he's looking at what he's got, and he's well, I got maybe I got 17 pounds, but there's a couple of things I really didn't play just right. So there's room for improvement. And I just thought, when are you going to bust out laughing? I mean, come on, you are playing the role. You've got to just double up. But actually, he's proven to us before. He's a gamer all in every time he goes out. We figured that out the last day he fished the year he won Progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year. Had to wait at the dock, had the thing won, and went back out in the middle of Lake Ontario to finish the job. You know, just because he did not want to be thought of as someone who would lay off at any bit during the last day.
Like most of every other human being on planet Earth. Why go get your head beat in on Lake Ontario? Hey, I'll tell you, that's when I took notice of Kyle Welcher when he won that Angler of the Year and went out to where he went on days 1 and 2. Dude, he battled some stuff where you're like, this guy's got some stones to do what he's doing.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk more about that, I think, a little bit later, you mentioned. And next up on the old schedule here, News, Notes, and Nuggets, we're going to talk about Scott Martin, the Scott Martin situation. Why don't I start by reading the brief note about this on Bassmaster.com. Here it is. Bass officials confirm that Elite Series angler Scott Martin has voluntarily withdrawn from B.A.S.S competition for the remainder of 2025. A formal protest was submitted on March 28th concerning Martin. However, he chose to step away from the Elite Series before the B.A.S.S investigation process concluded and prior to the administration of an official truth verification exam. By that, I'm assuming they mean a lie detector test. But that's stepped away, rather than get into the contesting that at that point in the proceedings. So you talked to him, and I didn't know you'd had a lengthy conversation. I know you touched base with him.
Yeah, it was lengthy, and I said, Scott, from a business standpoint, and he agreed with this. From a business standpoint, not taking the truth verification, I don't know whatever it's called, truth verification, not taking that to me was a very, from a business standpoint. Let me preface that Scott said he was going to step away from the Elite Series at the end of this year. Now, hey, the way the points were going, it wasn't going to be a choice. Yeah. Scott wasn't going to, he wasn't coming back with where he was at in the standings last year and this year. But from a business standpoint, okay, so your Bassmaster career is coming, looks like it was coming to an end. Now, if you Scott has another business. Scott has television and content. Sure. Now, if you take that truth verification and you don't pass it, now you've endangered the other side of your career. And I said that to Scott. I said, you're in a potential lose-lose situation from tournaments and content. Okay. Right. And he agreed with that. Now, this is a story that this is a story I've never told. I talked to Scott about this when it happened. This is 5 years ago, okay? Right. I talked to Scott about this on Thursday. Is when the split happened 5 years ago, Tommy, Chase Anderson came to all of us and said, hey, we need to fill out the Bassmaster Elite Series field. Let's get, and I don't remember what the number was. What was it? Eight anglers or 10 anglers, whatever it was. Okay. But I wanted to vet those anglers and know that we were getting the best of the right crop. And I went to somebody at the time, an employee at FLW, and I gave him a list of names. Okay. I gave him a list of names. And here's what that employee came back with. The Johnstons are very aggressive on the water, and that could rub some anglers wrong. Well, that's proven out to be fact. That's proven to be fact. Okay. Great. Another angler's name was thrown out that is not at Bass. He's at MLF, and that angler has been DQ'd. Okay. That is a fact. That angler was said, you might want to stay away from him. We did. The other angler was Scott, and the employee at FLW said Scott might play in the gray area, which could be a problem at the Elite Series. Scott, a lot of the anglers feel that. There's just been a lot of smoke, okay?
All right.
A lot of smoke. And he said, and with that being said, other anglers were calling me about that. And Scott made a phone call. Scott said, hey, I didn't get an invite to MLF, and I don't know why he didn't get one to MLF. Look, if you had a pulse and a social media, you got an invite to MLF.
That doesn't make any sense.
I said, Scott, I can't speak for them. I have no idea, but I'll tell you exactly what was said to me. And he goes, well, I'll just qualify through the opens, which he went and did.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Here's what I will tell you. So anyway, we went with the anglers that we went with, and we didn't. Scott did not get that invite, and he made it on his own. And here's what I can tell you, and I told a company this a year ago. For the I think it's been 3 years that we've covered Scott, he has been phenomenal to work with. Do I think this situation? Now, this is not fact. This isn't, I'm going to throw you an opinion. Do I think that Scott got way too close to the fire for the Okeechobee tournament? Yeah. Do I think Scott got way too close to the fire, even though what he said, I only talked to this dude back in September or something like that? Yeah. I think he got, and listen, Scott professes, I did not get any information that would have broke a rule for the Pasquotank. I don't know that he did or he didn't. We're never going to know.
Right.
I said, Scott, you just shouldn't have made that call. You shouldn't have called the dude. And he said, looking back on it, you're 100% right. Here's what sucks about this. And it's strange because I said, this is going to sound absurd what I'm going to say right now. I said, this is so much like the Tom Brady deflate gate that went on for the better side of 2 years. Yeah. There was two sides of that. There were the Tom Brady haters and there were the Tom Brady lovers. And the Tom Brady lovers said, well, it's a stupid rule. Well, yeah, but it's a rule. It's a rule. And I think Scott got too close to that rule. And look, is Scott the fall guy for what was last year? That's all we heard was the rookies. They're getting information. They're cheating.
Yeah.
Is Scott the fall guy right now for that? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Part yes, part no. But here's what I do know, Tommy, and you know this. Seth and Hackney had some pretty choice words about Scott on recent podcasts with Mercer, okay?
All right.
I'm going to tell you what the Elite Series anglers don't do. The Scott Martin's peers in the history of the sport, they might say something to you personally, but they do not. In professional bass fishing, people do not go public with, hey, that you got to keep your eye on that dude right there. That does not go on in this sport, and it went on in this instance.
Yeah.
In a full circle, I don't think Bass wins on this. I don't think Scott Martin wins on this. I don't think his family wins on this, or the companies that he works with. I think my exact words to Scott, I said, this whole thing nauseates me. It nauseates me. I respected the hell out of him calling me and giving me, his side of it. But maybe like Matt Herron, Scott needed to move on after this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And a business decision, that's the way you opened up on that. And I think that may be the best explanation for it at all. We talk about these rules, always the Bassmaster rules since the beginning have been to keep anglers from getting a competitive advantage against their fellow competitors. But everything you do as a competitive bass angler is to gain an advantage over your fellow competitors. They sharpen the edges of the box of the things that you could do that were prohibited. They sharpen the edges of that this year.
Yes.
Is Was that
Yes.
carried out in the best way? Do you think it got out to everybody how serious that was and how much more closely that they would be watching those things?
Boy, if you're not paying attention to the first three events of this season,
it's out now.
And you fish the Elite Series, and if you play around in that gray area, you may want to jump out of that situation right now. And the other thing is we literally said this after the Heron DQ and Scott's DQ from Okeechobee, or I'm sorry, St. John's River, then Okeechobee, was it. This exact situation is what the anglers wanted. Dumb rule, good rule, bad rule. Look, when FLW had the you could do whatever you want. You could practice for 110 days. Several of my buddies that work there said, dude, it's like the Wild West here. I mean, there's guides going out with dudes, and is the no information rule perfect? No, of course it's not. No. But if it deters the field from actively going out, for lack of a better way to put it, for somebody to hold your hand to learn a body of water, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And again, let me say this. It's not a hard rule to obey.
No,
it's not a hard rule.
Don't pick up the phone as being the first part of that.
Don't make that call. Don't message that dude on social media. Don't do that. You're right next to the flame, man. You're right next to it. And the other side of this is when people say, well, I could just run down on the dock and say, you might want to be throwing a top water. Stop it.
No,
that's not it. That is not the spirit of this rule. The spirit of this rule is somebody actively, whether you're asking for water quality, where they're biting, what I should throw, that's what the spirit of this rule is. And again, Scott's been awesome to work with. I wish him the best in his career. I consider the dude a friend. And I feel bad all around for the sport, for his fans, that this went down the way it went down.
All right.
Yep.
All right. That's a good place to wrap that up there. And yeah, Scott is so important to so many people. He's a hero to so many people out there. And,
yes.
Everybody loses when personal beefs and smoke is a good way that you put it, tends to cloud the playing field and the judgment field especially. And it's just not good. Not good. All right, so let's move on. Let's move into our flights. We got a top flight. We got a last flight. So what do you got? What do you got for the top flight as it stands right now after 3 events on the Bassmaster Elite Series?
That was a weird transition right there. That was a weird transition.
I don't know any way to soften that. Oh, I hear a tinkling in the...
All right, so we're going to talk about first flight. And listen, this is positive in, negative out.
Okay.
First flight. Boy, hate to say this, Tommy Sanders, we have lost one of our first flighters. Jordan Lee is not on our list, and I got to put him up there right now.
Okay.
I got to put number 4, Trey McKinney. How do you not have him up there, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Here's why I say that about this young pistolero with a Southern voice from Southern Illinois. You know what I mean about that's a weird thing right there.
That is a strange deal. Okay.
This angler right now, I'm not even going to talk about really what he did at Okeechobee, what he did at the class. Yeah, I am going to talk about the Classic. Another big tournament here on the Pasquotank. Here's why he is number 4 on my list, Tommy. If he did not lose a day's weight at Smith Lake, I talked about this at the Classic. If he did not lose that weight at Smith Lake last year, he probably would have blown away the Angler of the Year title against Chris Johnston.
True.
Okay?
True.
There's number 1. Number 2, besides that slouch that Easton Fothergill caught the last day on Ray Roberts, he was in contention not only to win Angler of the Year last year, but was in contention to win the Bassmaster Classic this year. You're going to be in my first flight. Number three, who has slid down my standings, young Patty Walters. Now, I feel like I'm going to eat this after Hartwell in a couple weeks. It's almost why I put it up there.
Yeah.
But I really thought young Patty Walters was going to be a massive, massive factor on the Pasquotank. I thought he was going to be a massive factor.
I did too. I picked him to win. Yeah.
Exactly. Patty Walters, again, looking for a big rebound. He lives right down the road from Hartwell. Obviously dominant every time we're at either Santee for the most part or when we go to Murray. I'm looking for a big turnaround and for him to at least go up one notch after Hartwell. Number two, and he's starting to capture my heart, Tommy Sanders.
Oh.
Third in the Angler of the Year points. I'm going with Jay Shakurit. I think Jay has proven he is now one of the best fishermen in the country. And the other thing about Jay Shakurit, he's really turned into an all-around hammerhead. Whether he is using technology, whether he's up north, or a dirty body of water. And that's the one thing that I brought up for First Flight in our very first podcast. If you're gonna sit around in my first flight, you better know how to do it all.
Right.
I want to see every bullet in the revolver, every box checked. Jay Shakurit does that. Number one, they're staying there for me. Number one, it's a little bit shaky right now. I'm going with Carissa still. Number one.
That's both Johnstons.
As long as Corey and Chris Johnston, that's one human being to me. That's not two anglers. As long as they're creeping around in that classic cut, they're going to stay number one on my list. We're looking at Chris Johnston, 9th. Corey, I believe, is in the low 30s, 30 or 31st place right now in Angler of the Year. And Corey with a really, really big classic that we just got done with. These two still owning the top spot, and obviously where we're going next on Hartwell. Hartwell, I've been there many, many times. Fishes a lot like a northern lake, as weird as that sounds. And I think you're going to be able to look at them all tournament. That is my first flight. Top flight, first flight.
Excellent. Four anglers right there, 1 through 4. And before I offer my couple of nominations, I want to react to yours and start with Trey McKinney. Yeah, completely second that emotion right there, because Trey McKinney, you think about it, since he came out here, 75% of the time, if you were going to try to win a tournament on the Bassmaster, you had to go through that guy. And you were most often going to be battling against him very close in the standings on the final day, within the top 10. I mean, that's how much of an influence he has become. That's how much of a presence he has become at the top. I mean, we ought to have his picture on the Bassmaster Live, logo, if we had a logo. But Trey McKinney, absolutely agree with that. Patrick Walters, yes. I mean, I picked him to win at Pasquotank. It's just, I'm a little, thinking about it. I thought this was when he was going to fire up. He'd been holding off a little bit this year. He was going to fire up, but I think you're right. He's going to fire up next week. Jay Shakurit, totally agree with that. In fact, I'll talk more about him a little later on to see if you can guess what I mean by that. And
let's go.
Okay, let's
Teaser.
go. And Carissa, yeah, no, I mean, I don't see anything to diminish the threat that those two marauders from up north visit upon the Elite Series anglers each and every tournament. I think they're just as much feared, if not more, with each passing tournament in the year. So let me offer my two, and they're sort of veterans. I'm going to put some veterans in there, and they finished very well at the recent tournament. That's kind of what I'm basing it for. Number one is Brandon Lester. Brandon Lester, we talk about, how many times people appear in the top 10. Brandon Lester has not been in our top 10 since St. Clair in 2023 when he was river fishing on the St. Clair River. It's been that long since he has been in the top 10 here. I mean, he's, he has done well this year. He's been 7th in the Classic, but he missed both cuts to start the season, and we've just been missing him in our final day's coverage. But
how does he not have an Angler of the Year title?
That he's come so close so many times, but now he's right just outside the Classic cut. He really helped his situation, of course, by finishing second. Man, he held him there for second place. I mean, admittedly, it was 45 pounds back of of our winner. But my gosh, I give him props for all that, and he's probably going to, 42nd is just outside the Classic Cut, but it will probably end up being in the Classic Cut. And hanging on to second place is very important. Now, the second one, good friend of yours, Keith Combs. Same story.
Oh!
Keith Combs' last top 10 appearance was in 2022 on the Mississippi River here. We have been missing him. He has been in a downward period ever since then. He was 60 seconds last year. He's had no classics since 2023 and only half of the classics in the last decade for this guy who's been out here 15 years. But, man, he turned it around.
You know, what's bizarre about the Keith Combs thing is like Brandon Lester, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, he was in contention in the top 10 of Angler of the Year like every single season.
Absolutely every year. So Keith.
I'm pulling for Keith. It just makes hunting season when I go hunting with Keith a lot nicer, happier Keith Combs. So, and not only that, what you picking him and me not ensures that he'll be pissed at me next week and drop me a text. Very good first flight, Tommy.
Well, then I've done some good today. If I can get Keith Combs mad at you, that's
okay.
Great.
This is hard.
Okay. Last flight.
This is not good. But let's start with positive. Let's start with positive. So far, 3 anglers have gotten off of the last flight. Look, this is not the flight you want to be on. Okay.
Right.
Anglers that have gotten themselves out: Joey Cifuentes, Scott Canterbury, Drew Benton. Those anglers are off of last flight since the first podcast. Some anglers that are on it. Number 4, Friendo. Possibly best friend on earth, Greg Hackney.
Oh.
What?
Really?
And Tommy, here's where I was wrong. I thought this year's schedule, still think this year's schedule, Greg Hackney said me never, is 88th place in Angler of the Year points. And here's what makes no sense about that. A lot of our viewers know what he's good at. If you look at the first 3 tournaments, that is what Greg Hackney is good at, which makes it even more. And not only that, Greg's also fishing NPFL, and the more Hackney traditionally is on the water. What is the deal? The more that Hackney is on the water, the better he performs. That's why this year is an anomaly. Third. Mercer calls him the next greatest big thing or something like that.
Well,
Ben Milliken, where are you at? Ben Milliken, where are you? We have lost Ben Milliken. We have lost the 402. Ben Milliken sitting in 93rd place in points. And again, just one of those anglers. And here's what last flight is. I hate to say there's some names down at the bottom of the Angler of the Year standings that we've seen down in the standings before. I'm putting up people that you're like, what are you doing down there in the standings? But I have to think, look, we're going to be heading to Texas in a month. I have to think the tide is going to turn. But at the same point, you can almost tell, like when Milliken's been on stage with Mercer, it's almost like it's up in the head right now. Third, Ben Milliken. Number 2, Jeff Kaustafsons. Jeff Kaustafsons. Now, granted, the Canadian snow leprechaun is, I have no idea. And look, a dude's won a classic. He's always in the class, always catching them, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to be going to some lakes where, look, he's going to either he or Patty Walters is going to throw this in my face and probably win on Hartwell in a couple weeks. But to see Gussie down in 95th place, granted, I don't think the lakes have, at least for how we see Gussie fishing all the time, I don't think they've set up very well for him. But number 2, Jeff Kaustafsons. Number 1, and he's living there. He's living rent-free in my head, Tommy.
I hear you.
Matty Robertson. Now, here's what I'm going to say about Matty Robertson, okay? I'm starting to get worried about Matty.
Okay.
You look at where he was at in the standings last year. You look at where he's in the standings this year. Now we have to start to really pay attention to his requalification situation for the Elite Series.
That's right.
Okay. He predicted he would have a huge tournament on Kentucky Lake in the Open, in which he did. He predicted a victory on Hartwell next week, which he needs. That is Last Flight. And Tommy, I hate to do this. Last Flight is such a bummer. But at the same point, those 4 anglers that you're looking at right there confuse the fire out of me right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yep. Careful.
Okay. All right. I understand. They confuse me I'm just as confused as you are. And the one I do want to maybe add a little bit to is Gussie is I mean, we're going to a place that he has dominated, both in a classic and in the tournament preceding that. If he can't make the classic this year, that has got to be the most profound disappointment he could possibly have, I would think. You know, in his
he'd be a good guest analyst, though. He'd be a great guest analyst.
He's really good at that. He did that for us last year at the classic. Okay.
Jeff Kelsey.
Mine is positive too. Really positive. Not you know, punching down on anybody, but I'm talking about great anglers, which you are too in your last flight. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Brandon Cobb. Brandon Cobb, I mean, he came out. You talk about swinging and just proved it. And, you know, you talk about somebody who didn't show up in the top 10s from 2019 up until about 2023, midway through that season, maybe to the end of it. He was the guy who was there almost all the time, almost like a Trey McKinney. He was always in that top 10 right there.
Toting Elite Series trophies, Tommy. Toting trophies around at ICAST. Not one. Like I'm not kidding. He had a little wagon for him, a little wagon for his trophies at ICAST. Well, I'm like, dude is happening.
Yeah, sometimes 2 at once. That was him the first year. No doubt about that, right? Okay. But now we see him finishing 97th up there at the Pasquotank River. I mean, this is just the adjacent state there. Just doesn't add up. One cut made this year. I don't know. He's a great angler. He's in a down cycle. He's going to bring it back. And of course, we're coming up on a side of one of those blue trophies. Coming up in our next tournament there. So we expect Brandon Cobb to do the better. Same case. Not quite as extreme on the down cycle, but you mentioned Jordan Lee. I'm putting Jordan Lee in there in that slot for my second one. Jordan Lee. I mean, when Jordan Lee left in 2019, it was kind of Brandon Cobb who came in and filled that slot in for the young sort of miracle worker coming in and doing it. And Jordan Lee at this point, I mean, our expectations, what he suffers from, kind of like what Ben Milligan suffered from, was way too high expectations because of advanced billing and so forth.
Caleb Williams, the quarterback for the Bears.
Exactly, the same thing. That can make you suffer, because we expected by now Jordan Lee to have already won an Angler of the Year and be pretty much leading the pack for the 2025 one this year. But Jordan, I don't know.
Tommy, this is a first for TnZ.
Okay.
Jordan Lee was in my first flight, podcast 1 and 2, and it has now in last flight. How does that even happen?
We just work our flights differently. 93rd, taking him down to 54th place in the points. He was 12th at Okeechobee and 12th at the Classic, so he's not washed out by any means, but you just expect him to be way up there, and you expect him to be in form for Hartwell, where he won the second of his back-to-back Classics, But I tell you what, look at the other two people who have won there at Hartwell in recent years. Christie, and he 84th and 93rd, and they're coming into places where they won. So both of them can turn things around in a big way. 84th and 93rd, not in points, but in the tournament last week.
Yes.
Those two. So that's my last flight. And it's just good guys on a down cycle. You expect them any day now to really turn things around.
I have a vibe. I definitely have a vibe. One of these last flighters that we put up today is going to make us eat words in 1 week.
Oh yeah, and love it, absolutely, along with most everyone else. Okay, can we do some Strike King now, or we got Lose going here?
No, Tommy, I'm gonna transition to Strike King.
Okay,
and I'm like a lot of our viewers. I have a lot of lures that go away. They go away. You'll find a good lure, and then all of a sudden it's discontinued. Well, I got news. One of those lures, Tommy Sanders, Strike King Wake Shad, okay?
All right.
Strike King Wake Shad, a phenomenal bait, a phenomenal post-spawn bait, a phenomenal bait when they're schooling on the surface. And this is one of those baits. That Wake Shad right there is one of those baits that even though I couldn't tape with it, when it was discontinued, I was like, I'm not getting rid of my Wake Shads. I don't know if that's proper pronunciation, but here's what I can tell you about this dude right here. You can slow kick it. You can burn it. It throws off a lot of water. Good to see the Strike King Wake Shad back. Definitely one of those baits that a lot of people, when it was discontinued, I'm going to say it was probably like 7 or 8 years ago. I had a lot of anglers like, dude, why did they get rid of the Wake Shad? It is back. It's back in full force. Get your hands on those, especially with the time of year that's coming. Strike King Wake Shad.
That's interesting. You know, with a lot of cases through the years of people wondering, why in the world, if you're going to get rid of one of your lures, why did you do that one? And I guess there's all sorts of explanations for that. The things that we mortals don't understand.
Tommy, I have cut you off a million times in my lifetime, and I apologize for that. We're going to go to what is the deal. Yeah. And before we get to what's the deal, I want to show you something real quick that I dug up while you were doing the Pasquotank. This is what I dug up, Tommy, and I want to know what the hell is this right here. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
What is this? You explain it to me.
Let's look.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay, hold on. I want all of our viewers to just really trench in right here. What is this? Wait.
Good morning, Doctor Who fans. The name of that episode is Warrior's Gate, and we'll be back with the conclusion of it in just a moment after this
Tell
brief
me, what is
interruption.
it? What am I watching here?
This is the fundraiser for a place where I had worked many years before this time, and they would ask me to come back and help with the fundraising, and here I am raising funds for Doctor Who on the Arkansas Educational Television Network. All dressed up in a suit.
Nobody ever.
Yeah, the one and only. And so this is my desperate plea. We called it the Begathon, or I called it the Begaboo every year. That was a tradition, and they would pull in people who would, submit to volunteering to lose 2 weeks of their time, basically, working on this thing.
And not only that, Tommy, what we're coming upon a part of this. I've really studied this. I'm going to shut down for a second. Tommy, don't say anything. This part I love.
For your $180 pledge, you will receive the 25th anniversary Doctor Who poster. This is fabulous. A one-time offer. Certainly there's only one 25th anniversary. In addition, for that same $180 pledge, the Doctor Who mug with the TARDIS that disappears when the hot beverages put inside. And for the first 10 pledges of $180 or more, starting right now, the Doctor Who tote bag. This is not an AETN tote bag. This is a specific Doctor Who tote bag. This is a fabulous piece of work, and there's just no reason to pass it up. First 10 callers only, though, so you better call right now. 1-329-5900 is the number to call.
Pretty darn persuasive, wouldn't you say, right there? I did have people stop me on the street and say my TARDIS disappeared and never came back. So,
Tommy,
there's a downside to that.
I did a thing called Bait Shop, a movie a while back. That right there, I'm not going to lie, that was your bait shop. When you got the tote bag out, literally, I felt Dan Bowen from the old ESPN days was going to walk behind you for a few minutes.
And hit me in the head with a baseball bat or a cricket bat.
That or buy you a Rolex. Hey, real quick, we're going to do something different for What's the Deal. I just really enjoyed that content.
That was great content, I must say. Thank you so much.
Let's go back to the Pasquotank real quickly. Really quickly, and let's look at what went on out there in that sound. What went on out in that sound? Now I'm going to call. I'm not supposed to look at the content, but we're going to take flight with Ben Milliken. Okay, literally here, Tommy. I have fished the Great Lakes. I have run in big water. You ready? Slow down, fool. Slow down, man. Just slow down. Look, if it takes you 15 extra minutes to get to where you're going, instead of saying, man, I can't believe my trolling motor broke. Well, duh. Dude, what are you doing?
Did they not think the stuff would break? Or they just said it's just part of the cost of doing business?
And look, it was terrible. And obviously you could see a lot of these. What's interesting is I got to watch a lot of content of dudes that were running in this stuff. There's a lot more vicious than I'm looking at right here. This is not remotely close to the vicious. But what was funny was like Matt Robertson's, watch him take flight right there. Hey, my trolling motor broke. Really? Duh. The one that sticks out the most is Drew Cook burying one. And what was funny was, not funny, but you saw Drew take his eyes off of what was in front of him. And a lot of our rough water runners know this. Boy, it could be a microsecond that you take your eyes off the next wave and you bury it. Let me say it again, Tommy. Slow down, fools. Yeah. Come on, man. Yeah. Slow down.
And what is the deal? Do we not go to enough places with big water that these guys have developed enough respect for it? And we go to St. Clair and it seems like it's always laying down for us. St. Clair can get awfully nasty, but it's been pretty doable for recent memory here. Is it a matter of that the collective memory is being lost of how to run these places?
Well, the other thing that you could tell went on in this tournament, you could tell when you're doing this to yourself, there is an internal clock going on in your head. Need to get there, need to catch five, need to look at that right there. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Is that generally speaking, growing up fishing Erie and Ontario and all blah, 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 is I will never forget this. There was a certain tournament, it was an EverStar tournament 94 years ago, and I was easing down the North Shore from Kingsville to all the way out to Peely Point, and I remember seeing like a half dozen boats passing me, and I'm like, and my co-angler was like, wow, you suck. I said, no, we're gonna get there and we're gonna be casting. And I said, you watch what happens when we get there. And we got to where I was fishing, and those half dozen boats all had cordless screwdrivers, hammers, duct tape. And how I know that happens, I've done it before myself. The more you speed up like that right there, Ben, the more baby cries. Yes, boat being baby.
That's, what is the deal with that? That was something else.
There you go.
All right. So this point, when we get closer to the end of the day, we listen for a familiar call, an expression that will live forever. And here it is.
Here comes the weigh-in.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
that's right. That's
right. You know that dude just cannibalized like a pack of Marbreds right there before he said that. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the domination in which, whether you were using forward-facing sonar or you were using, we got to see a lot of landscape mode, a lot of perspective view in this tournament. An interesting thing that Kyle Welcher said today, he said, dude, I'm bummed. My first win came using forward-facing sonar. And I said, dude, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, he goes, I'm an old schooler. I'm not a fan of forward-facing sonar, but I'm a competitor. Okay. And I said, I respect that. I respect the heck out of that. But if you really look at forward-facing sonar and landscape mode, this time of year, okay, I'm going to talk about 3 tournaments. When they're spawning, okay, when they're up spawning, and you're not eye spying them, Tommy, you're not looking at them.
Right.
You're using this technology. You look at what Corey did at St. John's.
Right.
You look at what Scott Martin did at Lake Okeechobee, and what Kyle Welcher did at Pasquotank is, if you're the person that cracks that code, you win by a massive margin. If you find that area where it's going down, where you combine, I think I called it last year, kind of blind sight fishing. You're not looking at them with your eyeballs, you're looking at your screen. Here's what I tipped off at the top of this podcast that was very interesting that Kyle Welcher said. He goes, dude, if you go in a canal and you see one with your eyeballs, okay, there's a pretty good chance that fish has been pestered for countless hours by us, by anglers. Yeah. They become smart. He said, when you find giant spawners with your technology, they feel safe. They're dumb. That's the word he used throughout the weekend, texting, and when I talked to him today. When you are on a giant female and she feels safe, she will bite within 10 casts. He said, hell, he goes, that 10-pounder I caught bit twice, and then I caught it. That doesn't happen all the time when you're doing it with your eyeballs. So that's one of the biggest thing. And the other thing that I told Kyle is look, dude, don't feel bad. You played by the rules. Every other angler in this tournament, I said, you should be so proud of what you did. And he said, hey, man, he said, look, I'm going to use technology as long as we're alive. He said, am I in support of it? No, I'm not. He said he likes to figure it out on the fly without it. But he said, I'm also a competitor. The other, and I said this on the Bassmaster Live yesterday, some goofball will get online and say, well, it's not as good a victory because he was staring at a screen, and that person probably has caught 10,000 bass sight fishing. Well, Kyle just did it in a different way, okay? To me, what he did, very impressive. But again, the point of the weigh-in today was, if you crack that code with this technology on spawners, you got a good shot of not only winning, you got a good shot of lapping and embarrassing the field, which is exactly what we've seen the last 15 months.
Yeah, the technology is not to blame for what happened there at that river.
No.
I mean, most of the anglers have that technology.
It's to credit.
Most of them use it.
Yes.
It's not like a machine you turn on and automatically catch fish. Obviously, Kyle, he didn't do it with a pack of them in there doing the same thing. He was the only one. The singularity. He added something that was not part of the technology, and the only way that's the only way I can think you can explain. All these anglers had access to this place. Probably 50% of them were in here at some point during practice or the tournament.
100%, and I really think when he broke it down, hey, dude, when you find them like this, to where they're not getting pestered, he said a spawning bass is actually very dumb if they're not bothered. And he said, I found a bunch of dumb ones. And again, that word he used is profound. He said, I found ones that felt safe, not pressured. And that safe feeling, he said, is why, for the most part, they were very, very easy for Kyle Welcher to catch.
We never talk about luck being much of a factor, but I think, as far as Kyle having that to himself and discovering that when he was at loose ends, he had no prospects for this tournament, but to go into that area and to early on get some feedback that was, and I'm asking you this, he hit probably a couple of the really good places. Chances are he might not have, but I think, don't you think he got some benefit from landing on the right spot?
Tommy, I believe it's a lot like, remember when E.T. was in that shack in the shed? Okay.
I barely remember.
Listen, Elliot knew it. Elliot knew there was something in that shack.
Okay.
And he's putting out Reese's Pieces. Okay.
Yeah.
Luring, look at me, Tommy, luring E.T. up to his bedroom. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he wanted E.T. as a pet. And he was an alien. But the deal is with Kyle Welcher is that first one, that second one was like the Reese's Pieces, okay?
Yeah.
It led Kyle Welcher to that trophy, because if he would not have caught that one big one that he had marked, pretty good shot, he'd have just went and burned some gas like the rest of the field.
Yeah.
E.T., Bassmaster victory. That's exactly, and I believe that. I believe if he would have had a slow morning on day one, you don't see him dominate the way he did.
For Elliot and Kyle, it was that. It was Kismet.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
How about one more hit of some Strike King stuff, or some Lose, whatever you choose?
Strike King, something I actually had my hands on several years ago, Tommy. That right there is a tour grade compact tungsten jig. And the great thing about it is the line tie. It's very hard for me to show you right there, but that line tie right there comes through rock, comes through wood, grass, phenomenal. The other thing, it looks big because I've got it right up to the camera, but that compact tungsten jig, it has bulk, but it's very good for casting. It's good for plinking around docks. And it's a smaller profile than usual jigs that out there being made with tungsten. One of you is going to win all of this. And Tommy, as we bark upon, as we're on the cusp of Easter weekend,
Yes, we are.
I'm gonna make it. Whoever wins this, do you remember what you got to say to win?
Oh boy,
There you go.
give me one of those.
There, something along. You got to rewatch. But listen, I'm gonna make it rain Easter eggs on whoever wins this, and we'll highlight them in 2 weeks after the Hartwell event. That's what I got, Tommy.
All right, we got one more piece of business to clean up here. Oh yes, of Olympic proportions. That's our cue to choose our favorites for the next stop. As we sit here and tape, it's coming up in a little over a week's time. Lake Hartwell, a familiar destination. Unlike where we were this past week, Lake Hartwell, scene of multiple classics. Who's going to win this one, Mark Zona?
Tommy, I don't know who in the production truck chose that music right there, but I'd like it to keep rolling. That was fantastic, fantastic stuff. I'm going to go with Coming Off the Full Moon. Chilly throughout the Carolinas the last week. They got to be coming, bud. They got to be coming, right?
Right.
I am going with warming temps. Give me Drew Cook, and Drew Cook. And look, I picked him. Here's why I did not. I feel like I was cheated when I picked him and Drew Benton to possibly win the Classic. That cold front hit before the Classic, I'm like, wow, my picks are going to suck. Well, they didn't suck. They both had a very good tournament down in Texas at this year's Classic. I just feel Drew Cook is at the top of his game right now. I did enjoy seeing him stuff that wave on his social media. If you've not seen it, need to check it out.
I will check that out.
I'm going with Drew Cook, 22nd place in AOY, giving me one of those trophies where we can brag on it in a couple weeks. Drew Cook, Tommy's hand.
All right. Well, I'm going with a little more chalk than Drew Cook. I'm going 3rd place in AOY, and I said I'd mention this person again today. Jay Shakurit is who I'm picking to win at Lake Hartwell. I just look at last week. He spent a lot of time in the top 10, but it faded a little bit out down to 15th place. I think this time it's a different sort of landscape. We look at Highland reservoirs, places like Smith Lake and others. I mean, he's good everywhere, but it seems to perform very, very well in that sort of reservoir. And I'm just thinking, time for Jay Shakurit to knock out another win. I think.
Tommy, I'm going to give more stuff away. Are you ready for this? I like this segment. I'm gonna, you know what? Not only try to win the prize package that we did today, I'm going to send a second prize package out. I want people to get on my social media and tell me who they think is going to win the Lake Hartwell Elite Series tournament.
There you go.
Randomly, if somebody gets it right, or several do, I'm going to pick one of them randomly, and I'm going to send more free stuff. Listen, I'm going to make it rain for Easter this year, Tommy. I'm going to make it rain.
Are you going to send out one of those lamb Easter cakes that looks like a little lamb? That you clued me in on.
Karen's making one.
Is it tradition?
It's very weird because she makes this vanilla coconut lamb. My mom used to make them when I was a kid. And my very first thing I do every single year is I take the head off of it.
I've never heard of those things until you sent me a picture of that one, and it would look very delicious and also very sort of frightening a little bit.
Can we end this podcast with more Doctor Who and you?
Who fans and
No.
Pimping. No, I'm sorry, Tommy.
Interruption, of course.
Let me just say one thing, Tommy, while we're doing this right here. is how serious you took yourself in this piece. And here's what I can promise you, Tommy. You have made fun of several of my younger videos. I'm on the hunt for more content of you out there, my friend.
Okay.
I am on the hunt.
All right, I just got one tease to end it with. Get ready sometime in the months to come for a little more bait shop, if you know what I mean.
Oh, that's so bad.
If you know what I mean. All right, folks.
I love you, T.
I love you, Z. Thank you so much for being with us today. Always a pleasure to visit with everybody on the TnZ Podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next time after Lake Hartwell before we go to Texas.